Hey everyone! Today I will be speaking about the unseen threat, why attackers see what developers miss. I'm going to speak from my own experience because I work in cybersecurity for quite a lot. Yep, and of course, yeah, it works. So yeah, I started hacking 15 years ago. It started very early. I was the first kid to get banned during the high school, during the IT class, when I tried to hack the other people with keylogger. So it started very early. Also, I joined Web3 in 2013 when the Bitcoin was still growing up. I remember I had 200 Bitcoins back then. It still hurts. So yeah, for the last 3 years, I worked for Hacken. It's the cybersecurity company. I found around 70 critical issues, and I also found a lot of issues in bug bounty programs. So yeah, the Hacken itself is the cybersecurity company, Web3 cybersecurity company. We do almost everything: audits, pen testing, proof of reserves. We work with the big clients. I even managed to find an issue for Binance. But let's finish on that and let's think how hackers think. To be honest, I'm only telling from my own experience, but I think it all starts with curiosity. Just a simple question: how the things work? What will happen if I change something? Can I somehow bypass the restriction? The same story. When I was a kid, I was the one who was disassembling the toys to see how they work, the cloaks or some other stuff, because it was more interesting than the toy itself. To create something better from it was more interesting than just the toy itself. I really love that. So, I would like to show you how I think when I start working with the projects, when I start the audit, when I do some bug bounty. I will show you 10 places, my top 10, and general patterns where I search for the issues. It's mostly from my own experience. I don't know if other hackers work the same, but good luck with making a general ranking. So this is my private one. Okay, let's start with number 10. It's the code ported from another platforms or languages. Yeah, so in many cases, when we have a project, for example, in Solidity, and the team is starting to moving it to Solana or Sui, Aptos, they try to copy everything they have because the product is already audited and it works. It works so far, so let's just copy it. But it's not so simple because there is a lot of platform-specific behavior. So if they have developers who don't have real experience with other platform, they just want to port it because they think it's easy, it's a very big trap, and a lot of companies fall for it. Recently, I was working on such project, and they were porting from Rust to Movement, and it should be almost the same, but they made 2 critical mistakes in their project. Yeah, so they made an issue with filtering data. At the bottom is the example. So in the original code, it was Oracle project. In the original code, they were parsing data for every Oracle, every feed they had. And it worked correctly. It was taking the timestamp of the first package, and then it was verifying that timestamp for all other feeds packages is the same. But when they ported this code to Movement, they decided to do an optimization, and they added option to filter data, to receive only data for given feed from the same signet data. And of course, they made a mistake, because later, when they verified this data, they verified only filtered data. So all the other data which was in the package for the other feeds was not validated at all, but later, in the same code, part of this unverified data was used to calculate the timestamp. It allowed to move timestamp into the future for an Oracle. Pretty big issue. The other very interesting issue I had was when code was ported from 64-bit platform to 32-bit platform. So, right now, almost all the code runs in 64 bits, but there's a very rare case, which is WebAssembly, which uses usually 32 bits. And by doing that, they assume that nothing can go wrong, but it did, because the change, the size of U size changed from 8 to 4 bytes, and it introduced overflow. And it was possible to manipulate the signature verification. OK, next category, 9, code using algorithms. I really love algorithms because before starting my cybersecurity career, I worked a lot with optimizations, games, algorithms. So I have a lot of experience in this. So I always check how the developers use the algorithms, even the simple one like sorting, like finding median, or some mathematical calculation. Do they know about the complexity or not? Are they handling edge cases correctly? Because the interesting fact is that actually there's a lot of developers who don't really have experience with algorithms, or the only thing they have, like maybe sometimes they don't even know what's the difference between stable and unstable sorting. But if they don't know that, they can introduce some issues in the projects. And I will show you one issue like this. This one is very, very, very stupid, but I got 50K bug bounty for it, so it should be interesting. And the issue was that one project, it was layer 1 project, used base 58 instead of base 64 to encode the data. When they, emitted events, for example, or some logs, etc., they were using base 58. And, there's not much difference. There's only 4 characters difference when it comes to base 58 encoding. But there's one hidden problem, which costed them 50K, and it's complexity. Base 58 has n² complexity. So the thing is, if you start feeding it with a lot of data, the computations will take a lot of time, minutes, sometimes even hours. And base 64 don't have this problem. So yeah, simple mistake, and and a potential attacker would be able to take down the entire network just by sending a huge transactions with base 58. So yeah, a stupid mistake, but it happens. I was interested if AI would be able to find out this mistake, because right now we're having a lot of tools, AI-based, to search for mistakes. I asked ChatGPT o1 Pro, yeah, I subscribe, if it's safe to use base 58. It said it is safe. OK, so I asked it, OK, in this structure, which they had in their project, it was used for emitting events and serialization of data. Is it still safe? It said yes again. So I asked it even more directly, what are the risks involved with base 58? And it didn't know. So for me, that's a good thing. It means I can still keep my job for maybe a few years. OK, next thing, number 8, code on which multiple developers work together. This is hard to show in a practical example, and it would be a little unfair. But the thing is, when I'm checking the code, sometimes the difference between code quality is very visible. I can see that there's one experienced developer, the lead, who's create amazing code, but he has like 2 others who make mistakes. And sometimes just by following the other developers, those who make mistakes, it's very possible to find the issue. Because focusing on the weakest point is the best idea, and sometimes the developer can be this weakest point. OK, next thing, recently updated code, especially old code. So let's say we have some big project. It has a lot of legacy code, and they want to introduce a new feature. And to do that, they need to change something in the old code. And the problem is, when they do that, sometimes this old code changes behavior or some other code, which was used for something else. Like, in many cases, the updates like this are being done in rush. And it's, from my experience, it's quite usual to make mistakes, especially when changing something in old code. So have a lot of tests. OK, next thing. code integrating with third-party components. Okay, the problem with this is that usually the developers don't assume how to handle the situation if something goes wrong. So, okay, what should we do if Oracle starts to returning wrong data, or if it has some denial of service and don't work correctly? There are, or even worse, what if this third party will want to somehow abuse our own smart contract? From my experience, like 60% of projects don't assume such thing. They just, integrate with third party, and they count that everything will work correctly. So this is the place I always check, especially that a lot of projects have small mistakes, low severity issues, not dangerous at all. But sometimes the low severity issues can lead to high or critical severity issues in other projects. Okay, number 5, complex code with lack of tests. So sometimes when you have very ambitious project, like using zero-knowledge proof, or like doing perpetual decentralized exchange, lending market, you have a lot of complex operation, a lot of math. And when I see one thing, there's one special thing. When I see that the code is not tested, then it's a huge red flag. It means that almost for sure there's going to be something wrong with this. Because if developer cannot even test its own code, then it says a lot about the project. So I always check those places. So yeah, and the next thing with very complex logic is that sometimes even if you achieve 100% test coverage, there are still some edge cases which, okay, maybe in total everything is covered, but in individual cases, it's still very, very easy to miss something. Yeah. I have an example of such issue. 2 years ago, I found a critical issue in Binance zero-knowledge proof of reserves. They were using pretty complex solution to calculate the assets. They were dividing it into the batches, linking with each other, and I found an issue which allowed to fake their proof when they were linking one batch with another. So yeah, I won't be going into the details. If you want, you will find it in the internet, the whole story. So yeah, search for Binance zero-knowledge proof of reserve Hacken, and you will find the whole details about the story. Okay, next thing, number 4, dangerous places in the code. So there are some dangerous things like cryptography, randomness, oracles, serialization. I love serialization. And the thing is that people think that those functions, packages are easy, but they are not. They are not easy at all. They require very specialistic knowledge to use them correctly. So yeah, when I only see someone trying to use those things, or even worse, trying to change them somehow or customize it, then it's another red flag because yeah, the complexity behind it is really huge. I will have some example. For example, with randomness. This is when I didn't find this issue, but when I read about this, Jesus, it was amazing. So imagine that we have a blockchain game, rolling a dice, and it has some randomness. Let's say it takes it from chain, or it has some built-in randomness. And you send the money, and based on this randomness result, you win or lose money. And the idea was that when you lose money, the smart contract will use more gas. So yeah. And there was a very small difference between winning and losing the money, like few percent difference in a gas. And someone managed to abuse it just by setting maximum gas cost of the transaction. Yeah, so every transaction he was sending, if it wasn't winning, it was reverted because there was not enough gas. But when he was winning, the transaction was successful. So yeah, crazy edge case. Same goes for cryptographic function, for example, hashing. Like, okay, we want to create some hashing function which will generate something unique address for some input data. And if we don't do it correctly, we may end up in situation where different data will result in the same hash. Like in this example, it all depends how we enter the length of given field, because combining some things together, we can use them to generate an issues. So yeah, and if everything, but the thing is, it will work. Everything will work perfectly. Test will work correctly. But if a hacker sees this, then he will know how to abuse it. Yeah. Number 3, multi-step operations, multi-transactions. OK, this is another very complex case because it generates a lot of edge cases. So if you need to do like 3 operations to make a transaction, or I don't know, lend some money from lending market, then pay off your debt, then there is a lot of opportunity to find some issues, because everything can happen between 2 transactions. The state of the smart contract can be changed, liquidity can be changed, prices of the token can be changed, and in many cases, not all edge cases are considered. And the same thing like with the complex code. If there's no test for it, if I don't see test of such scenarios, that's a huge red flag. As I say, if you cannot test something, you shouldn't be writing it. And it gets even worse if you add flash loan. And I found one very interesting issue with this. It was on lending platform. By doing very complex transaction, I was able to create exploit which would be able to steal $1.1 million. So yeah, this was my biggest issue I found when it comes to number of money. Imagine this, being able to steal $1 million. Of course, I didn't do it. I explained the whole issue, how by doing these 8 steps, by doing some crazy stuff in the transaction, like starting liquidation twice and creating one more loan doing the liquidation, you can steal the money, get an advantage over the lending pool. And of course, they fixed the issue, paid some bounty. The whole story is also publicly available. I was speaking about this during the DEF CON a few months ago. You can search for lending platform Hacken exploit, and you will find it. OK, next thing, number 2, reinventing the wheel, coding something that shouldn't be coded. Sometimes the developers are very ambitious. They want to do everything by themselves. So if they start working on things like custom serialization, custom cryptography, custom peer-to-peer, something which is already very available, then it's a very, very high chance that they're going to make some mistake with this. Those things are extremely hard to code. There are hundreds of edge cases, and in every situation, I've seen that the project is building something themselves because they have a better idea or something like this. It always ends up with a mess, seriously. So it's a very big red flag when projects try to do everything themselves. Yeah, there were some cases, but I'm going to skip it because I have last minute. So last thing, number 1, my most favorite, economic attacks. Those are perfect because sometimes even auditors cannot detect them. Yeah, because for many developers and auditors, not all of them, of course, they don't understand economics economics of a given project. For example, lending market, where they make money, where they lose them, what are the risks. And if they don't understand it, it can be easily abused. Let's give you an example. Let's say we have a lending platform. We can borrow USDC. We can borrow Ethereum. And we can use some meme coins to add our collateral. But those meme coins have very low market liquidity pool. In this case, by buying those meme coins for $20,000, we can raise the price to $1 and use it as collateral, which would be worth $1 million, borrow $200,000, and steal the money. Yeah, those are the perfect attacks. Yeah. Last thing, and I'm finishing, and the most important thing is to combine it all together. OK, so yeah, if you combine everything together, then you get the best results. Thank you.
You ordered a moonwalk across gas feed graves. My mainnet's smoother than your mom's VPN saves.